Welcome to the 2016 Dusseldorf Boat Show. Dusseldorf is one of the best and biggest shows in the calendar. 17 halls, everything from kayaks, sports boats, ribs, all the way up to the likes of the Princess 30 metre and the seriously funky Arcadia Sherpa. We're going to take you around all of the most important launches at this year's show. Let's get going. Making its world debut at the Dusseldorf Boat Show, it's the biggest boat of the show, it's the Princess 30 metre. It replaces the 32 metre, it's now the first boat in the M-Class range as well as the 35 and 40 metre. On board, the big news is the main deck master cabin, which is forward, completely flat floor, huge windows either side and massive glazing above as well. Really very special cabin. Below decks, this leaves you with 4 guest cabins on this boat, 2 doubles, 2 twins, but the twins have sliding berths. If you don't want that charter layout, you can have a full beam VIP cabin if you like that instead. Up on the Flybridge, well, that's where the fun really starts. This particular boat has got a hot tub, wet bar, loads of seating, but it also has a rather special accessory in a motorbike in its own pod sitting aft on the Flybridge. One compromise of the main deck master arrangement means you don't get a walk-through section on the bow. However, Princess have managed to include a U-shaped seating area and a large sunpad as well. In true super yacht style, this boat has its crew quarters forward. There's a separate cabin for the captain and then 2 twins for other crew members and a commercial spec galley. This leaves space in the tender garage aft for a 4.5 metre Williams. The saloon area is split between a more formal dining area and a relaxing space aft. On the starboard side, you can either have floor-to-ceiling glazing, you can have doors out to the side deck, or you can have the doors and an optional folding balcony like this boat here the show has. When it comes to propulsion, this boat has a pair of MTU 2,600 horsepower engines on V-drives, top speed 27 knots, and 10 knots should do 1,300 nautical miles with a decent reserve as well. This crazy looking thing is the Arcadia Sherpa. How big do you think it is? 60 foot, 65, 70? No, 55 feet. I mean, you really wouldn't be able to tell that from standing on this deck because what you have is the beam of an 80-foot boat. This setup is the Mediterranean version. As you can see, it's all about life in the sun, loads of different sun pads, sunbathing areas, place to sit here, but you also have 2 cabins on board, plus a crew cabin. But there is a version which has patio doors about here so that you can shut off the forward section of the cockpit, or you can have this totally clear as a super yacht support vessel, and you can fit a couple of 25-foot boats on this deck where I'm standing now. Propulsion, well, that's interesting too. Volvo Penta IPS 600, top speed, they claim 25 knots, but also very fuel efficient at about 13 knots. It should be pretty agile as well with that propulsion system. Interestingly, Arcadia is saying they're getting lots of customers who are picking this boat, downgrading from a super yacht to something of this size, because although it's a smaller boat, you still get the feeling of space, on this deck especially, of the lights for super yacht. You helm the boat from just up those stairs there. We also have a dinette and a wet bar. It also has full sliding glass all the way around the area so you can completely shut it off, air condition it and use it even if the weather isn't so good. And what's really peculiar is how far forward you're driving the boat from, and there's just this sheer drop off the front of the bow. Really strange bit of design. The starting price for this boat is €1.5 million excluding VAT. This is the new Azimuth 66. It replaces the 64, but it is a brand new boat and there are some significant changes on board. Like, for example, you have 1 extra cabin. This boat has 4 cabins on board, including a palatial midships master cabin where they've twisted the bed to run a thwartship, so you're looking out of these wonderful single-piece windows. They've also used a lot of carbon fibre in the structure, for example, in the hardtop, in the roll bar, in the forward section of the Flybridge, and in the bow area, so that they can increase on the space but keep the weight low, so performance is still good. There's only 1 engine option. That's a pair of 1,150 horsepower Caterpillar diesels, top speed 32 knots. As you can see, the Flybridge area is absolutely enormous. It extends a long way back in line with the cockpit, and that means that you have a fantastic living space up here. What I really like particularly is this area that I'm standing in now, where they've actually worked hard to put in proper seating. You don't see that very often on boats like this. You have freestanding furniture. Here they've made a really sociable, well thought out seating area in the most exposed part of the Flybridge. This is the new Benneteau Gran Turismo 46. Much like the GT40, it's been designed by Dan Leonard and Carlo Nuvolari, which you can tell by the look. The DNA is very clear between the 2 boats. The feedback, though, that Benneteau got over the old Gran Turismo 44 was that people wanted doors on a sports cruiser of this size, hence why this boat has them. It also has a lot of really funky tricks going on in the cockpit, like, for example, these electronically controlled lazy boys. You have seats that pivot so that they can come out and cross the threshold between the seating on the inside and the seating on the outside. Of course you have a sunroof, and in general the feel in the cockpit, the use of the materials, the colours is much more grown up and much more mature. Below decks, you have 3 cabins. You have a master amidships, which is en suite. You have a VIP forward, and there's also a bunk cabin to starboard. Engine options, Volvo Penta. You can have D6 370s, D6 435s. This boat, as you see it here, with the D6 370s, ready to go on the water, is just under 550,000 euros, excluding VAT. The Sea Ray 400 Sundancer makes its European debut here at Dusseldorf, and they've already got signatures for 2 of these boats at the show, which is even more impressive when you consider that the starting price is 637,000 euros. Though it is a lot of boat for the money and is finished to the typical high standard that we expect of Sea Ray. The layout on board, you have completely flat deck on the main deck, so the saloon and the cockpit merge together brilliantly, really social living space. And then downstairs you have 2 cabins, and you can either have a big walk-in wardrobe in the master cabin forward or an ensuite bathroom. And similarly, in the guest cabin, you can either have 2 berths or an optional 3rd berth at the end of the cabin too. As you expect of a boat hailing from the States, it's a great party platform. You have this barbecue on the transom, for example. You have the electric sun awning that comes out from over the cockpit. You have a sunroof over the wheelhouse as well. And you also have a really good sand pad area on the bow, so you can soak up the rays as easily as possible. This boat here has a pair of Cummins 480 horsepower diesels, and we're looking forward to getting a sea trial in the near future. This makes its European debut here at Dusseldorf. It's the Nimbus 405 Flybridge. Basic principle, it's the 405 coupe with the Flybridge on top. It's more of a glorified upper helm position than a Flybridge per se, but it does give you 2 helm seats up there to enjoy the elements, and there's also space to sunbathe and eat. And it also means that you get the deck layout of the 405 coupe. So it's very practical. You have a side door by the helm, nice big side deck on the starboard side as well. All in all, really handsome package. Lots of stuff to see here on the Axiopar stand, where they launched the 24 and the 37 to the world. This is the 24. There's 2 versions here at the show. There's a hardtop version as well. This is the open version, and typical Axiopar, the packaging is absolutely brilliant, in that you have 5 forward-facing seats. These 2 also swivel around to meet these 3 here with a table so that you can have lunch easily. Forward, you have the bow rider section, which is great for keeping kids in, and obviously a great place to see even more people on what is only a 24-foot boat. And then amidships, you have 2 quite snug berths, but with a canopy up, and of course on the hardtop version you could use them for overnighting if you wanted to, and you also have a sea toilet, which obviously adds to the comfort and ease of use when you're out day boating too. The price for this boat, as you see it here, ready to go with 150 horsepower Mercury outboard, 75,000 euros, including VAT. Let's go and have a look at the 37. So here are the 37s. We're between both of them here. You have the hardtop version here, but also the suntop. Now the layout on board is quite similar to the 28 if you're familiar with that, but of course much longer hull, and you have far more accommodation. You can have the optional aft cabin that you had on the 28, but there's also a proper V berth with a toilet forward too. Of course, you also have more space on deck, where there's a big table, big enough to fit 6 people. And instead of the aft cabin, you can also have a wet bar, or you can have it left completely open for water sports or fishing. Performance should be pretty good as well. The boats with twin 350s are doing around 50 knots. There are various engine options as well. The wheelhouse version here is 175,000 euros. This suntop version, 215,000, but it is a really top spec one. This is the new De Bornstream Born Cruiser 1200 Elegance. It's part of a range that runs from 1100 and will eventually go up to 1700. It's been phenomenally successful for Bornstream. They've sold 16 boats, including this one that they've just sold at the show. Bornstream are known for their aft cabin cruisers, but this is a slightly different direction for them. The idea behind the Elegance range is to give single level living, so the cockpit and the saloon merge into one another. The boats that you can use all year round, very safe, very practical. And also it's a steel boat builder, so there's a lot of customization to be had on board as well. On board this particular boat, there's a 2 cabin layout with a separate bathroom. Engine options, you can either have displacement boat. This one, for example, has 150 horsepower single Volvo D3, will probably do about 8 knots. But you can have twin 220 horsepower engines. That boat will do 15 knots. Though it has a much more modern design than we're used to from Bornstream, and on board especially, the interior feels far more Italian than it does Dutch. There's still the practical strongholds that you come to expect. So you have very safe side decks, you have tall bulwarks and guardrails, and you have opening side gates on either side, so the boat is very easy to crew, even if you're on your own. Starting price for this boat is 310,000 euros, excluding VAT. This is the Arctic Commuter 25, and it's essentially a budget alternative to the likes of Botnia and Sargo. The boats are built in Poland and they're incredibly good value. With a single engine, this boat starts from €89,000 excluding VAT, and even with a pair of D3220s, it's only 122 excluding VAT. The onboard layout's quite clever because you have two side doors and you also have a door aft as well, so you can enter the saloon from behind. And on board you have a forward cabin with a separate bathroom, and there's also a very, very cosy separate single berth beneath the dinette if you want that as well. Performance-wise, with the largest twin 220s, you should expect over 40 knots, and it looks like it's got a hull that can really handle the rough stuff. We look forward to giving it a full sea trial in the next coming months. This is the new Delphia Escape 1150 Voyage. Now, we saw Delphia in January at the London Boat Show. They're being imported by Norfolk Boat Sales, and this looks like a really interesting proposition. It has something of the Sargo about it, it has something of the Geno Velasco about it, fascinating hull shape, very upright bow, it has a small step forward, and there is an option with twin 225 horsepower engines as well, though this boat has the single option. On board, obviously it's a wheelhouse design, there's lots of glass, very practical. You have two-way seating in the cockpit, you have a flip-down backrest to make a sun pad, you have a sunroof over the wheelhouse, you have a side door, and you have a very clever system where you just flip the forward end of the dinette and it makes two forward-facing navigator seats. Below deck, there are two cabins, very spacious, good headroom in both. There are also two bathrooms, though strangely neither of them are en suite to either of the cabins. The price, well, that is Delphia's trump card. This boat starts from €125,000 excluding VAT, and as you see it here at the show, ready to go, €190,000. Amazing value.